It is October 1994. A German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt is standing on a quiet hill in southeastern Turkey, 6 miles from the city of Urfa, asking local farmers a simple question. Have you seen any hills around here with unusual stone or flint scattered across them? He is led to a gently rounded mound rising 50 feet above the surrounding plain. To most people, it would look like nothing, just another hill in a landscape full of them. But Schmidt has seen something like this before, and the moment he looks at the shape of this hill, he knows immediately that nature did not make it. What he is standing on top of, though he does not yet know the full scale of it, is the oldest monumental structure ever built by human hands, constructed nearly 12,000 years ago, by people who, according to everything archaeology believed at the time, should not have been capable of building it. This is Göbekli Tepe, and its discovery did not just add a new archaeological site to the map. It forced scientists to rewrite the story of how human civilization began. To understand why Göbekli Tepe matters so profoundly, you need to understand what archaeologists believed before it was properly investigated. For most of the 20th century, the accepted theory of human development followed a clear, logical sequence. First, humans learned to farm. Agriculture allowed people to settle in one place instead of constantly moving to follow food sources. Settlement led to surplus food. Surplus food led to population growth and specialization of labor. Only once you had organized, settled societies with surplus resources and division of labor could you have the social complexity required to build monumental architecture, organized religion, and the early structures of civilization. This sequence was so widely accepted that it was treated less as a theory and more as an established fact. Farming first, settlement second, civilization and monumental building third. Göbekli Tepe broke that sequence completely. The site had actually been noted once before, back in 1963, when a survey team from Istanbul University and the University of Chicago passed through the area. They found broken pieces of limestone scattered across the hill and assumed they were looking at an unremarkable medieval cemetery. They made a brief note in their survey records and moved on. Nobody returned for over 30 years. When Klaus Schmidt arrived in 1994 and began excavating the following year, what his team uncovered defied every assumption in that accepted sequence. Massive carved limestone pillars arranged in deliberate circular formations dated through radiocarbon analysis to approximately 9,600 BCE. That makes Göbekli Tepe roughly 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids of Egypt by thousands of years, older, in fact, than written language, the wheel, and pottery itself. And the people who built it were hunter-gatherers, not farmers, not a settled, organized civilization with surplus food and social hierarchy. Nomadic and semi-nomadic hunter-gatherers, the kind of society that, according to the established theory, should have been nowhere near capable of this level of coordinated construction. The pillars themselves are extraordinary by any standard, let alone for a society without metal tools, the wheel, or domesticated draft animals. They stand up to 18 feet tall, some weigh as much as 50 tons. They were quarried from limestone bedrock, carved with intricate relief sculptures, transported across the landscape, and erected upright in precise circular patterns using nothing but stone hammers, flint blades, and raw human effort. Schmidt's team eventually mapped the site using ground-penetrating radar and geomagnetic surveys. What they found beneath the surface was staggering. At least 20 separate stone circles buried across a 22-acre plateau. And the excavated area, the part visible to visitors and shown in photographs, represents less than 5% of the total site. In other words, everything that has captured global attention about Göbekli Tepe is a tiny fraction of what is actually there. The carvings on the pillars are where the mystery deepens further. Each T-shaped pillar is carved with intricate relief sculptures, predominantly depicting wild animals: foxes, boars, serpents, gazelles, vultures, wild sheep. The carvings are detailed and skillfully executed, often showing the animals in aggressive, threatening postures. Abstract symbols appear alongside them: H-shaped marks, crescents, and disc shapes, whose meaning remains completely unknown. Depictions of humans are rare, but where they appear, they are unsettling. One pillar features a headless human figure. Other carvings show decapitated bodies surrounded by vultures, imagery that strongly suggests this was not simply decorative art, but something tied to ritual, belief, and perhaps death itself. The T-shape of the pillars themselves appears to be deliberately anthropomorphic. Archaeologists now believe the shaft of each pillar represents a body, and the top represents a head. Some pillars include carved arms and hands positioned along the sides, reinforcing the idea that these structures were not just architectural supports. They may have represented ancestors, deities, or spiritual guardians watching over whatever took place within the circles. We do not know what that was. No altars have been found, no clear religious iconography that matches anything from later, better understood civilizations. The original interpretation, championed by Schmidt himself, was that Göbekli Tepe functioned as the world's first temple, a purpose-built sacred site, a destination for ritual gatherings, rather than a place anyone called home. For years, this temple theory dominated. Schmidt described it as humanity's first cathedral on a hill, a place where hunter-gatherer groups from across the wider region would converge periodically for shared ceremonies, then disperse again. But more recent excavation has complicated even this explanation. In the years since Schmidt's death in 2014, ongoing work at the site, now led by archaeologists Lee Clare and Nekmi Karul, has uncovered something the original theory did not account for: domestic buildings, rainwater harvesting systems, including a carved channel in the bedrock identified as a form of early plumbing, and a large cistern carved directly into the rock, roughly 25 feet across and nearly 8 feet deep. These are not the features of a site visited only periodically for ceremonial gatherings. These are the features of a place where people lived, at least some of the time, alongside whatever ritual activity occurred there. This has forced researchers to revise the simple ancient temple narrative into something more complicated. Current thinking suggests that ritual and ordinary daily life were not separate at Göbekli Tepe, the way they often are in modern understanding. Sacred and domestic functions appear to have coexisted in the same space, blurring a line that later civilizations would draw much more sharply. And there is another detail that makes the site even stranger. Every few decades, the people of Göbekli Tepe would deliberately bury their own structures. They would fill in an existing stone circle completely with earth and debris, and then construct a new, smaller circle directly on top of it. This pattern repeated itself across centuries. The oldest buried circles tend to be the largest and most elaborate, while each newer circle built on top is somewhat smaller and simpler than the one it replaced. Nobody knows why. It could have been a ritual act of renewal. It could have marked the end of a particular community's use of the site, sealing the past before building anew. It could be something else entirely that we have no cultural framework to even guess at, since no written records exist from a society that predates writing by thousands of years. By approximately 8,200 BCE, after well over 1,000 years of activity, Göbekli Tepe appears to have been deliberately abandoned and filled in entirely, not destroyed by invasion or disaster. Buried intentionally by the people who once gathered there. Some more speculative theories about Göbekli Tepe have circulated in popular media and online discussion, including claims that the site functioned as an ancient astronomical observatory, with its pillars aligned to track specific stars or constellations. these claims have drawn wide public attention. However, it is important to note that the archaeological team actually working at the site has largely rejected these astronomical interpretations, finding the evidence for deliberate stellar alignment unconvincing. The mystery of Göbekli Tepe's true purpose remains genuinely open, but the explanation is more likely to be found in the complex blended ritual and domestic life of its builders than in alignment with the night sky. What nobody disputes is the scale of what this discovery did to our understanding of human history. Before Göbekli Tepe, the timeline was simple. Hunter-gatherers wandered, farmers settled farmers eventually built monuments. Göbekli Tepe suggests, at least in this case, that the order may have been reversed, or at minimum, far more tangled than previously assumed. The sheer organizational effort required to quarry 50-ton pillars, transport them, and erect them in precise formations implies a level of social coordination, leadership, and shared purpose that hunter-gatherer societies were not believed to possess. Some researchers have gone further, proposing that the immense labor required to feed and house the workforce building Göbekli Tepe may have actually driven the development of agriculture in the surrounding region, rather than agriculture coming first and enabling construction later. Wild cereal grains and tens of thousands of wild gazelle bones, showing clear signs of butchering and cooking, have been found across the site. If this theory holds, it suggests that humans may have started farming not to feed settled villages, but to feed the workers building one of the first religious monuments in history. Construction may have driven agriculture rather than the other way around. That single possibility, if proven correct, would represent one of the most significant revisions to the story of human civilization in modern archaeology. And we are still nowhere near finished uncovering what this site has to tell us. Remember that less than 5% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. At least 16 additional megalith rings remain confirmed but unexcavated beneath the surface, detected through radar and geomagnetic survey, but not yet physically uncovered. Archaeologists working at the site have stated openly that excavation could continue for another 50 years and still not reach the full extent of what lies buried there. Every pillar still underground, every carving still hidden. Every clue to what these people believed, what they were trying to communicate, and why they buried their own sacred structures again and again across centuries, remains exactly where it has been for almost 12,000 years. Waiting. Klaus Schmidt spent the final 2 decades of his life devoted to this hillside in southeastern Turkey, convinced he had found something that would change how humanity understood its own origin story. He died in 2014, with the vast majority of Göbekli Tepe still buried beneath the earth he had spent his career studying. The site he uncovered did not simply add an old building to the historical record. It forced an entire field of science to admit that something fundamental about the story of human civilization may have been wrong, that the urge to build something monumental, something sacred, something meant to outlast its builders, may not have come after humans learned to farm and settle down. It may have come first. A hill outside a small Turkish city, hunter-gatherers with stone tools and no written language. 50-ton pillars carved with foxes, vultures, and headless men, buried again and again by the same hands that built them. We found it by accident in 1963 and walked away. We found it again in 1994 and have been trying to understand it ever since. 95% of it is still underground. That is Göbekli Tepe. If you want to go deeper on the mysteries and unknown events that continue to challenge what we think we know, subscribe to Horizon Archives. We will be back next week. There are societies we're not believed to possess.